was standing in the lobby of the Meridian building with the keys still warm in my hand when the fourth floor lights snapped on. All of them at once. A clean, unbroken line of fluorescent white glare cutting through the tinted glass, bright enough to paint long silver stripes across the wet asphalt of the parking lot. Rain had just stopped, and the reflection shimmered like the building was breathing in and out. I'd killed every single switch myself at 6:30. I'd walked every hallway, checked every door, listened to the last echo of my own footsteps die out in the silence. 10 minutes earlier, the whole place had been dead black. Now it looked like the entire floor was open for business, and everyone had just sat down at their desks, ready for another late night of work. I let out one short, or dry laugh that didn't even make it past my teeth. Probably a timer I missed. Old buildings have those phantom circuits wired wrong from the 80s. I told myself that, pocketed the keys, and headed for the elevator anyway, boots squeaking on the damp tile. The Meridian sits at the far back corner of Willow Creek Business Park, just south of Raleigh. 5 stories of plain beige concrete and smoked glass, thrown up in the late 80s for some insurance company that outgrew it and left it behind like an old coat. The last tenant was a small software startup that burned through its funding 8 months ago and vanished overnight. Desks still covered in sticky notes and half-empty takeout containers when the movers finally came. Now the whole complex is waiting on a buyer who keeps promising to show up next quarter, but never does. And my job is simple: daylight only. Patrol the grounds, keep squatters and bored teenagers from breaking in, log any damage or graffiti, forward the overnight security footage to the property management company every morning at 8 sharp. They pay in cash, hand it over in a plain envelope every Friday, no questions asked. It sounded perfect when I was still sleeping on my brother's couch after the divorce, trying to stretch unemployment checks and pretending I wasn't falling apart one piece at a time. I never planned on staying past sunset. Tonight was supposed to be my first official walkthrough after hours. Just lock every door, sign the logbook, drive home, and forget the place existed until tomorrow morning. Instead, I rode the elevator up to 4 with the flashlight already clenched in my fist like a weapon. Shoots the metal cool and heavy against my palm, the beam cutting sharp lines across the closing doors. The doors slid open onto a long, straight corridor of empty offices. Gray industrial carpet that had seen better decades. Beige walls with faint scuff marks from moved furniture. The faint stale smell of old coffee grounds and cheap carpet shampoo that never quite washes out, no matter how many times they clean. Every overhead panel was blazing bright. I started walking the length of the hall, flipping switches off one by one. Each bank died with a sharp electric pop and a little sigh of cooling metal. The sudden darkness felt heavier than it should have, pressing in from the sides, like it had been waiting for me. By the time I reached the end of the corridor, only the red glow of the exit sign above the stairwell remained, as painting the floor in a dull, bloody hue. I turned to head back toward the elevator. That's when I heard the chair roll. Not a scrape or a squeak. A smooth, deliberate glide across hard tile, like someone had just pushed away from a desk after finishing a long day and stretching their legs. It came from the corner office at the far end. Glass door, faded nameplate, still reading T. Hargrove, Director of Ops. I hadn't even opened that door yet. I stopped breathing for a second. The building was supposed to be completely empty. No power running except what I turned on myself. No cleaning crew scheduled for tonight. No maintenance guy the property company had mentioned in any email. Just me and 5 floors of silence that suddenly didn't feel silent anymore. The chair rolled again, closer to the glass this time, almost like it was testing how far it could come without me reacting, daring me to step forward. I gripped the flashlight tighter and walked over, the beam jumping ahead of me in quick, nervous sweeps. The glass was dark now that I'd killed the overheads, but inside I could see a faint green glow pulsing from a computer monitor. I hadn't turned any computers on. I hadn't even stepped inside this room before tonight. I pushed the door open. Warm air rolled out and wrapped around me like a hug I didn't want. It smelled lived in, like someone had been sitting there for hours, breathing, typing, existing. Half-empty water bottle on the desk, condensation still beating on the plastic. A navy blazer draped neatly over the back of the chair. The keyboard was still warm when I laid my fingers on it, the plastic retaining body heat. Gun on the monitor, a tropical beach screensaver drifted slowly, palm trees swaying in a digital breeze that never stopped. Underneath it, in the taskbar, 3 programs were open: an email client, a spreadsheet full of numbers, and a video call window minimized to a small black rectangle. I clicked the mouse once. The call window expanded instantly. The timestamp on the call log said it had ended 37 minutes ago. The host name listed at the top in bold letters: Marcus Ellis. My name? My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step on stairs. Not full fear yet, just the clean, sick certainty that something had already started without me. Something that knew exactly who I was and had been waiting. I backed out of the office, left the lights off, and took the stairs down, 2 at a time, on flashlight beam, bouncing ahead of me like it was trying to run away. In the lobby, I grabbed the logbook and wrote the time, 8:03 p.m. Under notes, I put nothing. What the hell was I supposed to write? Lights came on by themselves? My name showed up on a phantom video call? I locked the front doors, killed the lobby lights, and stepped outside into the cool April night. The business park was quiet except for the distant hum of the highway and the occasional car passing on the access road. My truck was the only vehicle left in the lot. I sat behind the wheel for a long minute with the engine off, staring up at the 4th floor through the windshield. Every single window was dark again, like none of it had ever happened. I drove home telling myself it was faulty wiring. Leftover software still running on the network. It's the kind of glitch that happens in empty buildings all the time. By the time I pulled into my brother's driveway, I almost believed it. Almost. The next morning I was back at 8:30. Sunlight poured through the big lobby windows and made everything feel ordinary again, safe, explainable. I did my full daytime rounds, checking every office on 4. The corner office was exactly as I'd left it. Door closed, lights off, computer powered down cold. No water bottle, no blazer. I opened every drawer anyway. Just a few paper clips and one dried up highlighter. Nothing else. I logged it all as routine. Then I spent the rest of the day pretending I wasn't waiting for dusk. Pretending I wasn't checking the 4th floor windows every time I walked past a south-facing door. In pretending the knot in my gut was just yesterday's bad coffee and not something growing. At 6, I locked the building again. This time I didn't leave. I told myself it was just being thorough. I sat in the lobby at the security monitor station with a thermos of coffee, a paperback I never opened, and all 6 camera feeds pulled up on the big screen. The parking lot camera showed my truck and nothing else. The hallways were empty. At 7:15, the motion sensor on camera 4 flashed yellow. 3rd floor east corridor. I leaned in close. The live feed showed nothing but carpet, closed doors, and the same half-dead ficus plant in the corner. I rewound 30 seconds. Still nothing. But the sensor had definitely triggered. I cycled through every live feed twice, fingers tapping the desk harder each time. And at 7:28, the lights on the 5th floor came on. Not the whole floor this time, just the big conference room at the far end. I could see the long oak table through the interior glass, chairs arranged neatly like a meeting was about to start. I grabbed the radio even though no one was on the other end. "This is Ellis. Anyone on site right now?" Only static answered. I took the stairs instead of the elevator. My footsteps sounded too loud in the concrete shaft, echoing up and down like someone was following me step for step, matching my pace exactly. On the 5th floor, the conference room door was propped open with a rubber doorstop I didn't remember seeing before. Inside, the projector was on, throwing a blank blue rectangle onto the far wall. A dozen notepads and pens had been laid out at each seat. One notepad already had writing on it, and I picked it up. Neat, ballpoint handwriting. First line, Q3 projections look soft. Second line, Marcus still pushing the Denver expansion. Today's date, timestamp at the top, 7:41 p.m. I was standing there at 7:42. I dropped the notepad like it burned my fingers. The pages fluttered open. When they settled, the projector clicked off by itself. The light stayed on. I moved fast now, heart hammering against my ribs. Down the stairs, straight back to the monitor station. I started manual recording on every camera. Whatever this was, I wanted proof I could watch later and convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. For the next 20 minutes, the screen stayed dead. Then at 8:55, camera 2 flashed. 4th floor again. I switched to it. The corner office. Desk lamp on low. Someone was sitting in the chair, back to the camera, each its dark suit jacket, shoulders moving like they were typing steadily. I couldn't see the face clearly because of the angle and the low light, but the posture felt familiar in a way that crawled across my skin and settled in my chest. I zoomed in as far as the camera would allow. The monitor in front of the figure showed the same tropical beach screensaver, palms still swaying. I whispered under my breath, "Who the hell are you?" The figure stopped typing. Slowly, deliberately, it turned the chair halfway around and looked straight up at the camera. Eyes caught the lamplight for a second. It raised one hand in a small, deliberate wave. Not friendly, acknowledging. Like it knew exactly who was watching from the lobby and had been expecting me. Then it turned back to the desk and kept working as if nothing had happened. My coffee thermos slipped from my fingers and clattered across the tile floor. The echo rolled through the empty lobby like a gunshot. When I looked back at the feed, the office was dark again. Lamp off. Chair empty. No one there. I rewound the footage immediately. The figure was still there on the recording. The wave was still there. The timestamp matched exactly what I had just watched live. I froze the clearest frame and stared at it until my eyes burned and the image started to blur at the edges. That was the moment the dread stopped being something I could talk myself out of. Whatever lived here at night knew I was here. It wasn't hiding anymore. It had looked straight at the camera and waved like we were old co-workers. I spent the next 15 minutes clearing every single office on the 4th floor in person, and flashlight sweeping every corner, every closet, every bathroom stall. All doors were still locked, all rooms empty. The only new thing I found was a single yellow post-it note stuck to the outside of Hargrove's door. It hadn't been there when I came up earlier. Same neat handwriting. Late night, Marcus. See you tomorrow. I peeled it off, folded it once, and shoved it deep into my pocket. My hands wouldn't stop shaking no matter how hard I clenched them. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my truck in the parking lot until sunrise, every interior light on, engine running the whole time just to hear something normal. At one point, around 2:17 a.m., I saw the 4th floor lights flicker on for exactly 3 seconds, then die again, like someone had flipped the switch and changed their mind. I sat bolt upright, gripping the wheel, my heart slamming, but nothing else moved. The building stayed completely black the rest of the night. Just a silent 5-story rectangle reflecting the passing highway lights and the occasional semi-truck rumble. At 7:30 the next morning, I went inside like nothing had happened. I did my full daytime rounds. I logged mileage on the patrol cart, temperature readings in every zone, every stupid detail the property company wanted on their daily report. I even smiled and made small talk with the FedEx driver who dropped off a package addressed to a tenant who hadn't existed for 8 months. But the whole day I felt watched. Not from the cameras, from inside the walls themselves, like the building was breathing around me, listening to every footstep, every breath, every muttered curse under my breath. At around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I found the first piece of proof I couldn't ignore or explain away. 2nd floor break room. Someone had left a lunch sitting on the counter. Half a turkey sandwich still wrapped in foil, a bag of chips, a red apple with one clean bite taken out of it. The foil wrapper on the sandwich had my name written on it in the same neat ballpoint handwriting I'd already seen twice. Marcus. The bread was still soft. The apple still cold from the fridge. Before I could back away, the wall phone next to the microwave rang once, short, sharp. My own ringtone. The one I'd set for unknown numbers. I hadn't touched that phone. I hadn't given anyone this extension. I stared at it until the ringing stopped. The break room lights flickered once, slow and deliberate, like a warning. I backed out of the room slowly, the eyes on the sandwich the entire time. My reflection in the dark microwave door looked small and pale and completely out of place, like I didn't belong here anymore. Outside, the sun was still up, but the shadows between the buildings had already stretched longer than they had any right to at 4 in the afternoon. I sat on the hood of my truck, lit a cigarette with fingers that refused to steady, and watched the 4th floor windows. They stayed dark. For now, I had 8 more weeks on this contract, and something inside the Meridian building already knew my name, my schedule, my routines, my fears, and exactly how to say hello. The cigarette burned down to the filter before I noticed. I flicked it away and watched the ember die on the asphalt, then climbed back into the truck and drove home. My brother was already asleep on the couch when I walked in. I didn't wake him. I just stood in the kitchen for a long time staring at the fridge light, wondering if the sandwich in the break room had tasted like anything, or if it had been left there cold and perfect just to prove it could. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that small wave again, the way the hand lifted like we were passing each other in the hallway at 9 to 5. By 6:30, I was back at the Meridian, sunlight already slanting across the empty lot, like nothing had changed. I did my morning rounds the same way I always did. Logbook, cameras, temperature checks. But my hands moved slower. I kept expecting to find something out of place before I even started looking. Nothing was. The sandwich was gone from the second floor break room, and the foil wrapper too. The notepad in the conference room had been cleared away. The post-it on Hargrove's door had vanished. Even the yellow note I'd shoved in my pocket the night before was missing when I checked my jacket at noon. I told myself I'd lost it somewhere between the truck and the house. I almost believed it. At 3 o'clock, the FedEx guy showed up again. Same guy, same route. He handed me a small padded envelope addressed to M. Ellis, 4th Floor Ops. No return address. I signed for it with a hand that felt detached from the rest of me. Inside was a single key card, the kind they used to use for the old electronic locks, before everything went manual. The name printed on it in tiny raised letters. Marcus Ellis. Access level, full building. I slid the card into my pocket, next to my own set of physical keys, and kept working like the envelope had never arrived. By 5:30, the sun was dropping fast. I locked the exterior doors earlier than usual, telling myself it was just good practice. Then I went straight to the monitor station and pulled every feed to live. I sat there with the same thermos of coffee, same paperback I still hadn't cracked, and waited. The first thing that happened was the coffee machine in the first floor break room. I heard it gurgle to life on the audio feed, even though I hadn't turned it on. The camera showed the red light blinking, then the carafe filling with fresh black coffee. Steam rose in perfect curls. No one was in the room. I watched the timestamp tick forward. At 6:47, the motion sensor on 5 triggered again. Your conference room lights came on exactly like last night. Chairs arranged, projector glowing blue. But this time there were 2 notepads with writing already on them. I took the stairs 2 at a time. The first notepad was the same handwriting. Denver expansion still on track? The second one, placed at the head of the table, had only 1 line. Marcus, you joining us tonight or still pretending you're not? I left both exactly where they were. My pulse was already in my throat. Back downstairs, the monitors showed new movement. Not lights this time. Actual figures. 2 of them. Walking the 4th floor hallway side by side. Dark suits. Briefcases swinging in rhythm. I couldn't see faces clearly on the grainy feed. But their strides were purposeful. Like they were late for a meeting they'd had every week for years. They disappeared into Hargrove's corner office. The door closed behind them without a sound. I zoomed on the office camera. The desk lamp clicked on. 3 people now. The original figure from last night, plus the 2 new arrivals, sat around the desk, like they were reviewing quarterly numbers. Shoulders moving, hands gesturing. One of them laughed, the sound thin and metallic through the tinny speaker. I whispered at the screen, "This isn't happening." The figure in the middle, the one who had waved at me, turned its head slowly toward the camera again. This time it didn't wave. It just looked straight at me and mouthed 2 words I could read even on low resolution. "See you soon." My chair scraped back so hard it almost tipped, whereas I stood there, breathing through my mouth, while the 3 figures went back to their meeting, like I had never interrupted. I didn't clear the 4th floor this time. I couldn't make myself. Instead, I stayed glued to the monitors, cycling feeds every 30 seconds. At 7:22, the elevator dinged on camera 1, even though no one had called it. The doors opened on the lobby level. Empty car. The doors closed again. 30 seconds later, the same ding sounded on the 5th floor. Empty car again. The pattern was locking in. Same times, same floors. Same quiet efficiency of people who had done this routine so many times they didn't even need to speak anymore. At 8:12, the break room phone on the 2nd floor rang again. I answered it before I could stop myself. "Hello?" A woman's voice, calm and professional. "Marcus, it's Karen from accounting. We're missing the Denver file on the shared drive. Can you upload your copy before the 9 o'clock?" I didn't answer. My tongue felt thick. She waited exactly 3 seconds, then continued like my silence was normal. "Great, thanks. See you in the meeting." The line went dead. I stared at the receiver in my hand. The extension number on the phone was the one printed on my fake key card. I hadn't dialed anything. I hadn't even touched the keypad. That was when the dread shifted from something I could watch on a screen to something sitting inside my own chest. I left the monitors running and walked the building floor by floor with the flashlight and the new key card in my pocket. Every door I passed felt warmer than it should have. On the 3rd floor, the copier in the alcove was humming, spitting out page after page of spreadsheets, and I picked one up. The header read, Meridian Quarterly Review, Q3. My name was listed under Operations Lead with yesterday's date. I crumpled the page and kept walking. On 4, the corner office was lit again, but the figures were gone. Only the blazer remained, draped over the chair exactly like the first night. The keyboard was warm. The screensaver showed the beach. When I moved the mouse, a new email was open. Sender, internal distribution list. Subject, Welcome Marcus, first official night. The body was blank, except for one line at the bottom. You're already on the calendar. I closed the email. My reflection in the dark monitor looked paler than it had yesterday. The bags under my eyes had deepened. I was halfway back to the lobby when the lights on the entire 1st floor snapped on at once. Not just the break room. Every overhead, every hallway sconce, every emergency exit sign. The sudden brightness made my eyes water. I heard the soft chime of the elevator again, this time stopping on 1. The doors opened. Inside stood a single figure in a dark suit, back turned, holding a coffee cup. Steam rose from the cup. It didn't turn around. It just stood there like it was waiting for me to step inside with it. I took one step forward before my legs locked. The doors started to close. At the last second, the figure raised its free hand and pressed the door hold button without looking. The doors slid open again. A voice came from inside the car, casual, almost friendly. "Coming up, Marcus. We saved you a seat." The voice sounded like mine. I turned and ran for the stairs. By the time I reached the lobby, my shirt was soaked with sweat, even though the air conditioning was still off. The monitors showed the elevator doors closing on 1. The 1st floor lights died a moment later, one bank at a time, like someone walking down the hallway flipping switches behind me. I sat back down at the station and rewound every camera that had caught movement in the last hour. The figures were there. The phone call was there. Audio captured clearly. The copier pages were there. The email was there. Everything except the voice in the elevator. That one had no visual, just the empty car on the feed, and the sound of my own voice coming through the speaker. The mid-chapter break came at 9:41. I was reviewing the fourth-floor hallway footage when the motion sensor on the lobby camera flashed red, not yellow, red, urgent, and I looked up. I was standing at the front doors. Not on the feed, in real life. My own body, wearing the same jacket I had on right now, keys in hand, staring straight into the camera from the other side of the glass. The timestamp on the screen read 9:41 p.m. Exactly now. The me on the monitor smiled the small, tired smile I make when I'm pretending everything is fine. Then it raised the key card, the same one I had in my pocket, and swiped it across the reader. The lock clicked open, even though I was still sitting at the monitor station 20 feet away. The other me stepped inside the lobby. I stood up so fast, the chair rolled backward and hit the wall. My real legs carried me toward the doors while my brain screamed to stop. The lobby was empty. The doors were still locked from the inside. No second Marcus. No key card swipe. But the motion sensor light was still glowing red. On the monitor, the second me walked straight to the security desk, sat down in the chair I had just left, and looked up at the camera. It reached forward and tapped the screen once, right where my face would be if I were still sitting there. Then it mouthed the same two words the figure in the office had mouthed earlier. "See you soon." The feed cut to static for 3 full seconds. When it came back, the lobby camera showed the empty desk exactly as it was. Chair in place. No second Marcus. But my thermos was now sitting on the desk, instead of the floor where I'd left it. And next to it lay a fresh yellow Post-it. I walked over on legs that didn't feel like mine. The handwriting was the same. "Forgot your coffee. Don't stay too late tonight. We start the real work at 10. I picked up the thermos. It was warm, freshly made. The same brand I drink every night. That was the first time I seriously considered walking out and never coming back. I didn't. Instead, I spent the next 40 minutes checking every lock, every window, every stairwell door. Everything was secure, no footprints, no second set of keys. The building felt the same as it always did during the day, quiet, dusty, waiting. But the air had a different weight now, like it was holding its breath along with me. At 10:07, the pattern escalated again. All 5 floors lit up at once, not flickering, steady, full power, every single panel. The building looked like it had never been empty. I could see silhouettes moving behind the tinted glass on 4 and 5. Multiple figures this time, walking between offices, each carrying folders, pausing to talk in doorways. The elevator chimed constantly, moving between floors with perfect timing. I stood in the middle of the lobby and watched it happen on the monitors like a man watching his own house burn down from across the street. Then the speakers in the ceiling crackled to life. The building's old paging system, the one the property manager swore was disconnected years ago. A woman's voice again. Karen from accounting. "Marcus, conference room 5 in 2 minutes. Bring the Denver projections. Everyone's waiting." I looked at the monitor showing the 5th floor conference room. The long table was full now. 12 figures seated. Laptops open, notepads ready. One empty chair at the head. A name tent in front of it. Marcus Ellis. The paging system clicked off, but I felt the key card in my pocket grow warm against my thigh, like it had its own pulse. I walked to the elevator and pressed the call button before I could talk myself out of it. The car arrived empty. I stepped inside and pressed 5. The doors closed. The car rose smoothly, and for the first time since I took this job, I heard soft music playing through the overhead speaker. Corporate elevator jazz, the kind that used to play here every weekday at 9. When the doors opened on 5, the hallway smelled like fresh coffee and printer toner. The conference room door was propped open exactly like before. I could see the backs of heads, hear the low murmur of conversation. I stopped 3 feet from the threshold. One of the figures at the far end of the table turned its chair slowly. It took the same face I had seen waving at the camera the night before. It looked at me across the room, smiled the same small professional smile, and gestured to the empty seat with my name on it. "Glad you could make it, Marcus. We were starting to worry you'd miss the whole thing." The voice carried clearly, even though the figure hadn't raised it. I took 1 step backward. The elevator doors had already closed behind me. The figure tilted its head, still smiling. "Relax. It's just the quarterly. You've done this 100 times. My own voice answered from somewhere inside the room, calm and certain. "Yeah, I know. I'm coming." The words hadn't come from my mouth. I turned and ran for the stairs. Behind me, the conference room erupted in polite laughter. Aren't the kind people make when a coworker finally shows up late, but everyone's too professional to call him out. I took the stairs down, 4 at a time, heart slamming against my ribs. When I burst into the lobby, the monitors were all showing normal empty feeds again. Lights off on every floor. No movement, no figures, no meeting. But my thermos was still on the desk, still warm, and the Post-it now had a second line added underneath the first. "Next time, don't run. We hate starting without you." I grabbed the thermos, the note, and the key card. I shoved them all into my jacket and walked straight out the front doors without locking anything behind me. The night air hit me like a slap. My truck was waiting in the same spot. I climbed in, locked every door, and sat there with the engine running until the dashboard clock read 11:59. At midnight, the 4th floor lights came on one last time. Just the corner office. One figure sitting at the desk, typing. It didn't look at the camera. It didn't need to. I knew who it was waiting for. I drove home doing 40 on the empty access road, windows down, cold air whipping across my face. My brother was still asleep when I got in. I sat on the edge of the guest bed and stared at the key card in my palm. The plastic felt heavier than it had any right to. Tomorrow was my 3rd official night, and whatever lived in the Meridian building during the dark hours had just invited me to the meeting. I didn't know whether I was the new hire or the one they'd been replacing all along. I woke up with the key card still clutched in my fist. The plastic edge had left a shallow red line across my palm, and my brother was already gone for his shift at the warehouse, the apartment quiet except for the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I sat on the edge of the bed and turned the card over and over. The raised letters of my name caught the morning light. Full building access. I slid it into my wallet next to my driver's license like it belonged there. The day passed in a fog of routine I barely felt. I drove to the Meridian at 8:30, did the daytime logs, answered the property manager's email about a cracked window on 3 that I knew wasn't cracked yesterday. I smiled at the FedEx guy again. He asked if I was feeling okay. I told him I was fine. My voice sounded borrowed. By 5:30, the sun was low and orange behind the business park trees. I locked the exterior doors earlier than usual, telling myself it was just habit. Then I went straight to the monitor station, pulled every feed, and sat down with the thermos I had refilled at home. The coffee tasted metallic. I kept the key card on the desk in front of me like a dare. At 6:12, the first floor lights came on without me touching anything. Not all at once this time. One hallway at a time, like someone walking ahead of me flipping switches. The break room coffee machine started again. I watched the steam rise on camera 3. Then the copier on 3 began spitting pages. I didn't go look. I already knew what they would say. At 6:45, the elevator dinged on the lobby camera. Empty car. It rose to 4, paused, came back down. The pattern was tighter tonight, more confident. The building wasn't guessing anymore, it was scheduling. I stayed in the chair, my legs felt heavy. At 7:03, the motion sensor on 5 flashed. Conference room lights. I saw the long table through the interior glass, chairs filled, laptops open, the name tent at the head still waiting. My name. The projector glowed blue with a single slide. Q3 review. Marcus Ellis, lead. I closed my eyes for 3 full seconds. When I opened them, the slide had changed. It now showed a photo of me standing in the lobby yesterday, keys in hand, looking up at the 4th floor exactly like I had on night 1. The timestamp on the photo was 8:03 p.m., the same minute I had logged the first lights. I stood up. My knees cracked. I walked to the elevator and pressed 5 before the part of me that still wanted to run could catch up. The car rose smoothly. Soft corporate jazz played again. Yet sure, when the doors opened on 5, the hallway smelled exactly like it used to when real people worked here. Fresh coffee, printer toner, the faint sweetness of someone's perfume from the marketing team that left years ago. I stopped 3 feet from the conference room door. It was propped open. 12 figures sat around the table, backs straight, jackets on. They weren't blurry on a monitor anymore, they were solid. I could see the fabric of their sleeves, the way one woman tapped a pen against her notepad. The man at the far end, the one who had waved the first night, looked up and met my eyes. "Marcus," he said, voice warm and familiar, "we saved your seat." I didn't answer. My hand tightened around the key card in my pocket until the edges bit skin. He gestured to the empty chair. "Denver projections first, and then we can talk about the new hire orientation." New hire. The words landed like a stone in my stomach. I took 1 step inside. The carpet felt thicker under my boots than it did during the day. The air was warmer. Someone had set a coffee cup at my place. Black, no sugar, exactly how I drink it. A yellow post-it stuck to the side of the cup read, "Welcome to the team." I picked up the cup. It was hot. Real. The steam touched my face. The woman next to me, Karen from accounting, I somehow knew, leaned over and whispered, "You look tired. Rough night?" Her voice was kind, concerned, like we had worked together for years. I set the cup down without drinking. "I'm not staying." The man at the head smiled the small professional smile I'd seen on the monitor. "You say that every quarter. Then you stay until the numbers make sense." I turned to leave. The door had closed behind me. I didn't remember hearing it. My hand went to the knob. It wouldn't turn. The man continued as if nothing had happened. "Let's start with slide 1. Marcus, you want to walk us through the Denver expansion?" I felt the words rising in my throat before I could stop them. "The funding round closed last week. We're at 73% occupancy projection." The room nodded. Pens moved across notepads. Someone typed on a laptop. My voice had sounded normal, calm, like I belonged. I clamped my mouth shut. The words had come out anyway. Karen patted my arm. See? You always remember the details. I pulled away and walked to the window. Outside the parking lot was dark except for my truck under the single street light. The truck looked smaller from up here, farther away. I pressed my forehead to the glass. The cool surface helped for half a second. Then the reflection in the window changed. My own face looked back, but the eyes were wrong. They were the eyes of the man at the head of the table, tired but certain, the eyes of someone who had already decided to stay. Behind me in the reflection, the entire room was full of people who were not there when I turned around. 12 figures, all of them me. Different ties, different haircuts, different years, but every single face was mine. I spun, the room was normal again. 12 strangers in business casual, all watching me with patient, understanding smiles. The man at the head spoke softly. It's okay. The first few nights are always the hardest. You'll settle in. I backed toward the door. This time the knob turned. I stepped into the hallway and the door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded final. The elevator was waiting. Doors open, jazz still playing. I took the stairs instead. My footsteps echoed down all 5 flights, but I counted 6 sets of echoes. 1 extra pair keeping perfect time with mine. In the lobby, the monitors showed every floor dark again. No meeting, no figures. But my thermos was now sitting on the security desk, freshly filled, steam rising. Next to it lay a new key card. This one had my photo on it, driver's license picture, the one from 3 years ago before the divorce. The name printed beneath, Marcus Ellis, operations lead, permanent. I didn't touch it. I sat down and rewound the 5th floor camera from the last 20 minutes. The footage showed me walking into the conference room and sitting down, drinking the coffee, presenting the Denver numbers on the projector while everyone took notes. The timestamp matched the time I had just lived through. But in the footage, my face looked relaxed. Happy even, like I'd been waiting my whole life to be in that room. I stopped the recording on the frame where I smiled at the camera. My own mouth looked wrong on the screen. Too easy, too practiced. That was the moment the pressure truly sank in. The building wasn't just occupied at night. It was filling the shape of me, taking my routines, my voice, my memories, and making them its own. I left the monitors running and walked the building again, slower this time. Every office I passed had small changes. A family photo on a desk, my ex-wife and me on our honeymoon, a picture I hadn't seen since the split, in a coffee mug with my initials, a sticky note on a monitor that read, "Pick up dry cleaning for Marcus, Wednesday." Wednesday was tomorrow. I hadn't dropped anything off. On the 2nd floor, the break room phone rang. I answered without thinking. "Marcus?" My brother's voice. "Hey, you left your wallet on the counter. There's a key card in it I don't recognize. You want me to bring it by the building?" I hadn't left my wallet at home. It was in my back pocket right now. I felt for it. The key card was still there, warm against the leather. My brother kept talking. "Also, some guy called the apartment looking for you. Said he was from Meridian Corporate. Wanted to confirm your start date for the night shift." I hung up before he could say more. The phone rang again immediately. Same number. I didn't pick up. I walked outside to the parking lot just to breathe air that wasn't recycled through the building's vents. My truck was still there, but the driver's side door was unlocked. I never leave it unlocked. Inside on the passenger seat sat a brown paper bag. Inside the bag was the same turkey sandwich from the second night, freshly made, my name written on the foil in the same neat handwriting. I left it exactly where it was and slammed the door. When I turned back toward the building, the fourth-floor corner office lights were on again. One figure at the desk, typing. It paused, looked up at the window and raised a hand. Not a wave this time, a beckoning motion. Come up. I stayed in the lot for 20 minutes, engine running, radio loud with some talk show I didn't hear. Yells at 9:28. The paging system crackled across the entire building and out into the lot through the exterior speakers. Marcus, conference room 5. We're waiting on the final approval for your permanent badge. Everyone's here. The voice was mine. I looked at the monitors through the lobby glass. The conference room was full again. The empty chair at the head now had my jacket draped over it, the same jacket I was wearing right now. The mid-chapter break hit like a door slamming. I was halfway back to the lobby doors when my own reflection in the tinted glass stepped out of the building toward me. Same clothes, same tired walk, same key card clipped to the belt loop. It stopped 6 feet away and looked me straight in the eyes. You're making this harder than it has to be, it said. My voice, my exact inflection. Hey, they already processed the paperwork. You signed it last night. You just don't remember. I took a step back. My heel hit the curb. The other me smiled the small professional smile. It's easier if you stop fighting it. The building needs an operations lead. You need a place that needs you. Win-win. I lunged for the truck. The other me didn't follow. It just stood there under the streetlight, watching me fumble with the keys. I got in, locked the doors, and reversed out of the lot so fast the tires squealed. In the rear view, the figure raised a hand again. Not waving goodbye, just acknowledging, like it knew I'd be back. I drove to my brother's apartment doing 70 on the access road. The radio kept cutting to static and back to the same corporate jazz station that played in the elevator. I turned it off. The silence was worse. My brother was home when I burst through the door. He looked up from the couch, eyes wide. Dude, you okay? You're white as a sheet. I told him I was quitting the job. He asked why. I couldn't explain without sounding insane. Instead, I showed him the key card with my photo. He turned it over in his hands. This is your picture, he said slowly. But you've only been there 3 days. How did they get a permanent badge made? I didn't have an answer. He handed it back. Look, if it's that bad, just don't go back. Call them tomorrow and say you're done. I nodded. But when I went to the bathroom to splash water on my face, the mirror showed the other me standing behind me for half a second. Same tired eyes, same small smile, before it was gone. I slept on the couch that night with every light in the apartment on. At 2:47 a.m., my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Unknown number. I answered. Marcus? Karen's voice again, calm and professional. We noticed you left before we finished the agenda. No worries. We went ahead and approved the permanent position. HR will email the contract in the morning. Welcome aboard. I hung up. The phone buzzed again immediately. Same number. I turned it off and threw it across the room. At dawn, I drove back to the Meridian anyway. I told myself it was to return the key card and the thermos and tell them in person I was done. The building looked ordinary in daylight. Sunlight on beige concrete. Empty lot. My truck was the only one there when I pulled in. I walked inside with the key card in my hand, ready to slide it under the security desk and leave. The monitors were already on. Every camera feed showed the building exactly as it was right now. Empty, quiet, normal. Except on camera 4, the corner office was lit. The man who had waved the first night sat at the desk, typing. He looked up at the camera directly at me and mouthed 3 words I could read clearly. "We saved your seat." I stood there for a long time. The key card in my palm grew warm again, almost hot. I walked to the elevator and pressed 5. The doors opened on the conference room floor. The table was set for 1. My jacket still draped over the chair, the name tent, the coffee cup. The projector showed a single slide. "Welcome to Meridian Permanent." I sat down. The chair felt right. The coffee tasted right. When I moved the mouse on the laptop in front of me, my email inbox opened automatically. Hundreds of messages, all from today's date, all addressed to me. All about projects I'd never started but somehow already knew how to finish. I picked up the pen. The first line I wrote on the notepad was in my own handwriting. Q3 projections look strong. Outside the window, the sun was still up, but the shadows in the parking lot had already stretched longer than they should have at 9 in the morning. I didn't leave. The building had stopped asking, and I'd stopped running. The pen felt natural in my hand. The ink flowed smooth across the notepad like I had been doing this every quarter for years. Q3 projections look strong, I wrote again, underlining it twice the way the old operations lead used to. I didn't remember ever seeing how he underlined things, but my hand knew anyway. Around the table, the 12 figures nodded. Pens scratched in unison. Laptops clicked, or the projector advanced to the next slide without anyone touching the remote. A bar graph showing occupancy climbing steadily into next year. My name was listed under every column as lead approver. Karen leaned toward me again, her perfume the same soft floral I used to catch in the elevator back when the building still had real tenants. "You always nail the numbers, Marcus. That's why we keep you on the night shift. Keeps things consistent." I set the pen down. My fingers were steady. Too steady. The coffee in front of me had cooled to the exact temperature I liked after 20 minutes of talking. I hadn't taken a sip yet, but I knew it would taste right. "I'm not supposed to be here," I said. My voice came out even, professional, the way it did in the footage I'd watched earlier. And the man at the head of the table, the one who had waved at me on night 1, smiled that small, patient smile. "None of us were supposed to be here the first time. The building chooses who fits the role. You fit." I pushed the chair back. The wheels rolled silent on the thick carpet. "I quit. I told my brother I was done." A low chuckle moved around the table, polite, understanding. The kind you hear when someone jokes about leaving right before bonus season. "You say that every quarter," the man said. He slid a fresh contract across the polished oak toward me. The paper was warm, like it had just come off the printer. My signature was already at the bottom in blue ink. The date was today. "See? You already approved the extension. Permanent now. Benefits start next pay cycle." I stared at my own handwriting, wherein the loop on the M was exactly how I signed when I was tired. I didn't remember signing it. The lights in the conference room dimmed slightly, then brightened again like the building itself was taking a breath. On the far wall, the projector clicked to a new slide. Security camera footage of me sitting right here, right now, signing the contract. The timestamp read 9:14 a.m. The sun was still climbing outside the windows, but the footage was labeled Night Shift Permanent Onboarding. I stood up. My knees didn't shake. I'm leaving. The door was open when I turned. The hallway beyond looked longer than it had any right to, stretching past offices that had been empty for 8 months. Lights glowed behind every frosted glass panel. Keyboards clicked. Phones rang softly. A woman's laugh drifted from marketing when I knew her name without ever meeting her. Sarah from the old tenant list. She had moved to Denver 6 months before the startup folded. I walked. My boots made the same quiet rhythm they always did on the gray carpet. Behind me, the conference room door closed with a soft hydraulic hiss. No one followed. They didn't need to. The elevator waited at the end of the hall, doors open, soft jazz playing. I took the stairs instead. Each flight felt heavier. On 3, the copier was running again, spitting out my new employee ID badge. Photo, title, start date, permanent. I didn't pick it up. On 2, the break room phone rang. I kept walking. On 1, the lobby monitors were all live, showing every floor full of movement, silhouettes at desks, figures carrying folders, the conference room still lit with the meeting continuing without me. Already, I pushed through the front doors into the morning air. My truck sat alone in the lot. The engine was already running. I never left it running. Inside, the driver's seat was warm. The radio played the same corporate jazz station. A fresh turkey sandwich waited on the passenger seat. Foil wrapper marked Marcus in neat ballpoint. The key card with my photo was clipped to the visor. I drove out of the business park doing 30, hands tight on the wheel. In the rear view, the Meridian looked ordinary again. Beige concrete, smoked glass, sunlight glinting off the 4th floor windows. But one window stayed lit. The corner office. A single figure sat at the desk, typing. It didn't look up. It didn't need to. It knew I was watching. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Unknown number. I answered on speaker. Marcus? My own voice came through the line, calm and professional. You left before we finished the agenda, no problem. We approved everything. HR will courier the permanent parking pass to your brother's place this afternoon. I hung up and threw the phone out the open window. It clattered across the access road and disappeared into the grass. I drove straight to the apartment. My brother was home early, sitting on the couch with the TV muted. He looked up when I walked in. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept. You okay? He asked. You look different. I didn't answer. I went to the fridge, grabbed a beer, and stood there staring at the light inside. The turkey sandwich from the truck was now on the counter, unwrapped, one bite already taken out of it. I hadn't touched it. My brother stood up. Some lady called the landline an hour ago. Said she was Karen from Meridian Accounting. Asked if you were coming in for the night shift tonight. I told her you quit. The phone on the wall rang before he finished the sentence. Same ringtone as the break room extension. I picked it up. Marcus, Karen again. We noticed you didn't log the morning footage. Everything okay? We saved your seat for the 4 o'clock sync. I hung up. The line clicked dead, then immediately rang again. My brother watched me, face pale. Dude, what the hell is going on? I didn't explain. I couldn't. Instead, I walked into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. In the mirror, my reflection looked back exactly as it should. Tired eyes, stubble, the same faded scar on my left eyebrow from the divorce fight. But when I blinked, the eyes in the mirror stayed open half a second longer than mine did. They smiled the small professional smile. I turned the light off and left the bathroom. By 3 in the afternoon, the calls had stopped. But the apartment felt wrong. The The TV kept switching channels by itself to the local news. Every segment ended with a 30-second commercial for Willow Creek Business Park. Now leasing premium office space, night security positions available, flexible hours, immediate start. My face wasn't in the ad, but the voiceover sounded like mine. At 5:30, I told my brother I was going back one last time to return the keys and clear out my locker. He tried to stop me. I told him it would only take 20 minutes. The drive back felt shorter than it should have. The Meridian was waiting, with lights already glowing on 4 and 5, even though the sun was still up. I parked in my usual spot. The engine died by itself. Inside, the lobby smelled like fresh coffee. My thermos sat on the security desk, steam rising. Next to it lay a new logbook. The first entry was already written in my handwriting. Night shift commenced 6 p.m., all systems nominal. I picked up the pen anyway and added the next line myself. Operations lead on site. The elevator dinged. Doors opened on 5. I stepped inside without pressing any button. The car rose. Jazz played. When the doors opened, the hallway was full of soft conversation and the clack of keyboards. The conference room door stood open. The table was set for 13 now. My jacket still draped over the head chair. The name tent had been updated. Marcus Ellis, Permanent Operations Lead, when I walked in and sat down. The figures around the table turned to me with the same small, understanding smiles. The man at the far end slid the projector remote across the table. Your turn to run the meeting tonight, Marcus. Denver numbers first. Then we'll talk about the new night auditor we're bringing in next week. I took the remote. My thumb found the advance button like it had done it 1,000 times. The first slide showed the empty parking lot at dawn. My truck leaving. Then the same truck returning at dusk. Then me walking back inside. The cycle repeated 3 times in fast motion, each loop smoother than the last. I clicked to the next slide. It was a live feed of the lobby camera right now. My brother stood at the front doors, banging on the glass, shouting my name. I couldn't hear the sound, but I could read his lips. Marcus, come out! This isn't you! I clicked past it. The final slide was a single photograph. Me, sitting exactly where I was right now, pen in hand, smiling at the camera. The timestamp read 11:59 p.m. tonight. I set the remote down. My hands didn't shake. The coffee in front of me tasted perfect when I finally took a sip. Outside the window, the sun had set without me noticing. The parking lot lights clicked on, one by one. My brother's car was still there, but he was no longer at the doors. The lobby camera showed him walking back to his vehicle, shoulders slumped, phone to his ear. I wondered who he was calling. The man at the head of the table spoke softly. He'll understand eventually. They always do. The building needs continuity. I nodded. The motion felt right. The meeting continued. Numbers were discussed. Action items assigned. I took notes in my own handwriting. Every few minutes, the paging system would crackle and call my name for some minor task. Approve a purchase order, sign off on the overnight footage, confirm the new auditor's start date. I did all of it. At 11:47 p.m., the conference room lights dimmed to night shift levels. The figures around the table began to stand, gathering laptops and folders, saying quiet goodnights like people who had done this exact routine for decades. One by one, they filed out. Each paused at my chair and gave the same small nod of recognition. Last to leave was the man who had waved at me on the very first night. He placed a hand on my shoulder. The touch felt warm, solid, familiar. See you tomorrow, Marcus. Same time. He walked out. The door closed behind him. I stayed seated, and the building grew quiet around me. Not empty quiet. Occupied quiet. The quiet of desks still warm, keyboards still clicking somewhere down the hall, coffee machines gurgling on timers set years ago. I stood up finally and walked to the window. My reflection looked back, tired but settled, the eyes no longer fighting. In the parking lot, my truck sat alone under the street light. The driver's door was open. A new figure was climbing in. Same jacket, same posture. It started the engine and drove away slowly, taillights fading down the access road. I watched until the taillights disappeared. Then I turned back to the conference room. The table was already cleared except for one notepad left open at my place. A single line weighted in fresh ink. Night shift complete. See you at 6:30. I picked up the pen and signed my name beneath it. Bits of the lights on the 4th floor stayed on behind me as I walked to the elevator. The car was waiting, doors open, soft jazz playing. I stepped inside and pressed L for lobby. The doors closed. On the way down, I caught my reflection in the polished metal wall. For the first time, it didn't smile back a half-second late. It smiled exactly when I did. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened onto the empty security desk. The monitors cycling through every floor, every single office, glowed softly with night shift life. 12 figures moved through the hallways with calm purpose. One of them looked exactly like me. I walked to the front doors, locked them from the inside, and killed the lobby lights the way I always did at the end of my shift. Then I sat down at the security desk, opened the logbook, and enwrote the final entry of the night. Building secure. Operations lead on duty. Outside, the Meridian looked exactly like it had on my first evening. 5 stories of beige concrete and smoked glass, waiting for a buyer who would never come. The 4th floor corner office light stayed on, a single warm rectangle against the dark. I leaned back in the chair. The thermos was still warm beside me. The radio on the desk clicked on by itself to the corporate jazz station. I closed my eyes for a moment and listened to the building breathe around me. Copiers humming, phones ringing softly in empty rooms, keyboards tapping out reports. No one outside these walls would ever read. Tomorrow night, the new auditor would arrive at 6:30. I would be here to show him the ropes, just like someone once showed me. The cycle felt complete now. Not ended, complete. And somewhere down the long gray hallway, a chair rolled smoothly across tile, waiting for the next shift to begin.